Test driving the new Volvo XC60 is an object lesson in being very careful and doing your research when it comes to speccing your car. Spec is all important on a car, not just from the point of view of making sure you have the right toys, not just in terms of making sure that the colour won't kill its resale value, but certainly in this case, in terms of making sure that the car drives properly. Now, you might not think that spec would play an awful lot of a role here, that you'd think that a car is a big steel and aluminium chassis with 4 wheels, 4 tyres, a steering rack, an engine and a gearbox, and that adding or subtracting minor items from the spec sheet won't make that any bigger change. But it does, because a couple of weeks ago I drove an XC60 that was in absolute top spec D5 R design trim. Now, our design trim comes with stiffer suspension, bigger wheels, lower profile tyres, and in the case of the one I was driving, it had the 230 horsepower 2-litre turbocharged D5 diesel engine. And the problem with all of that is that it just doesn't marry up very well. What happens is you get a car that bounces and jolts over even the smallest of bumps, a car that has very aggressive chassis settings for what is supposed to be, after all, a big, comfortable, tall executive express. And it just doesn't gel. It just feels jittery and unsettled and a bit unrefined when it should be smooth and comfortable and assured and confident. But that is what you get if you go for this much cheaper, much more affordable, much more basic momentum specification car with the D4 diesel engine. Now, it is essentially the same engine. It's the same 2-litre 4-cylinder engine, just with a different state of tune, slightly smaller turbocharger. So you get 190 horsepower instead of 230. Now, you would think that that would make an enormous difference. It actually doesn't really. I mean, yes, the D5 is a bit quicker, but honestly, you don't really feel it in day-to-day driving, and you certainly don't feel the lack of it in day-to-day driving. The D4 has more than enough oomph for pretty much any situation you want to put it in, and it's much more refined as well, which really helps. Marries up well with the 8-speed automatic gearbox, and it just, combined with the softer chassis of this momentum, combined with the less stiff suspension, combined with what feels like a slightly altered steering rate, the whole car just comes together so much better. This feels like the XC60 should feel. The D5R design just felt awkward, like it was trying too hard to be too sporty, like a fat 40-year-old squeezing into a tracksuit to try and run a marathon, having had very little training in the past. Now, this is the one you want. It's not perfect, perhaps. The driving position can feel a little bit scrunched up at times, and while the quality is generally speaking excellent, and we still love this big touchscreen, these more basic digital instruments, the ones that come on this lower spec car, just don't feel quite so impressive as the larger 12.3-inch screen that you get on the spec'd up versions. Of course, you can add it as an optional extra, so it's not so bad. But what's good is wonderful seats, typical Volvo, very comfortable on a long journey, very good refinement, plenty of space in the back and the boot, and just this sensation that you're driving the right version. You're driving the one that's cool and comfy and refined and easygoing and very good on a long journey. Now, the D4 has CO2 emissions of 136 grams per kilometre when paired with the automatic gearbox and 4-wheel drive. So you're talking €280 a year to tax it. Again, that's a small advantage over the D5. And you're talking a significant price advantage. The D5R design that we drove was priced north of €70,000. This one is priced at a hair over 60,000, a little bit above the basic version of 54,000. But it's a much better value proposition. And to be honest, you don't miss the extra toys of the R design model. You still get the big screen, you still get the great seats, you still get the automatic gearbox, you still get all the things you need, basically. And of course, you still get the pilot assist self-driving system, which does take over a lot of the duties of driving when you're on the motorway. Yes, you still need to hold the steering wheel and keep an eye on what's happening, so it's not a fully autonomous car by any stretch of the imagination, but it does take the strain out of longer journeys, and that, well, that's just a classic Volvo trait, isn't it? Taking the sting out of a long haul. So, be careful. Beware of how you spec your XC60. If you get this one, you've got a car that is right up there at the top of the class, possibly even beating the benchmark Mercedes GLC. If you get the R design with the D5 engine, the stiff suspension and the big wheels, sorry, you bought the wrong car.